What can we expect from Auburn's Week 2 opponent in the Cal Golden Bears? Let's talk about it on this live edition of the Uptempo Podcast.
You are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
Yes, sir. Uptempo gang, Auburn family. Hope everybody's blessed, having a good week, having a good Tuesday night. Dustin Smith and Blake Lane back with you. Another edition of the Uptempo Podcast. Gonna take a look at the Cal Golden Bears, baby. Get to play a little Power 4 opponent this week, Blake, an ACC opponent and a West Coast foe in the Cal Golden Bears. And we figured bring our guy Thomas Dunn back on the podcast, man. We had a great time talking to Thomas last year. He covers the Cal Golden Bears over there in Berkeley. Thomas, how are you doing tonight, man?
Feeling good. Ironically enough, it's pretty hot out here for Bay Area standards. Nice steaming 90 degrees right next to the coast. So it's a little off-putting right now, but really pertinent for this weekend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, hey, man, right now it's looking like rain's going to be in the forecast this weekend, so y'all might get a nice, sticky, humid Alabama Saturday afternoon, man.
I'm not used to that. Last time I had something like that was in Houston, Texas. It was 105 and raining. So that's a bit of that I've had. So I'm not sure I want to go back, but I'm here for it. I'm a little bit stickier in Texas. Yeah, I'm going there Saturday, so we'll see how the weather shakes out.
Let's go, man. I think we'll both be there as well, so we'll have to link up and show you around Auburn.
Get you some lemonade. Get you some lemonade at Toomers.
I've heard you have to go. I can't believe I heard this. You have to go to a drugstore to get lemonade. I can't believe I heard
that. It's the best, too, man.
There's a lot of unknown that I'm walking into, and I'm like, I mean, you might as well say, yeah, it's a good trip to be yes and.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got you. Well, Blake, I know you want to get us started off, man.
Yeah, Thomas, you guys put up 31 points Saturday, and you start off 1-0 this year. I want to talk about the offensive side of the ball, and we met last year at your place, and it was low scoring. It was a tough night for both teams. But when I look at you guys this past Saturday, just talk about some of the guys that we might need to worry about on that Cal offense. I know you guys at the quarterback position, and there's some rotation and all that stuff. But what are some skill guys that we need to worry about?
Yeah, over the course of last year, a few guys came out and really showcased themselves as players that we didn't know before, but that we know now. The two guys I would point to in that regard are wide receiver Tron Grizel, who as of last year was a walk-on, now on scholarship. Was the wide receiver 2 all of last year, and it continued to be consistent so far. He was held to 1 reception last week against UC Davis, and in my opinion, that's not enough. You have to get him more involved, especially with all the musical chairs at the skill positions for the California Golden Bears. And if not, it's only going to serve to hurt Cal when they try and go into Auburn Saturday and win. The other guy I'm looking at is Cal tight end Jack Endries, another guy who was a walk-on last year, another guy who broke out onto the scene last year, and another guy that developed great rapport with Fernando Mendoza, the presumed starting quarterback this Saturday against Auburn. Those two guys and those three in general are going to need to band together and put plays together consistently, because everywhere else along the offensive skill positions, even in the running back room, and I've told you guys this off air, it's a lot of musical chairs elsewhere. So the guys who have been there, have done that, they're going to need to be there and lead, because it's not going to be easy. And you can't just assume, okay, I had one receiver with chemistry that was here one week and now they're not. Who else am I going to throw to? I'm out of people. You're not. You got people who you're with last year fighting the fight and trying to get to a bowl game, and they're going to need to band together one more time.
Thomas, when you mentioned quarterbacks here, you said you're assuming that Fernando Mendoza is going to be the starter, but he split time with Chandler Rogers. Mendoza had a lot more passing attempts. He had plus 20 attempts, and I believe Rogers only had 6. He went 3 for 6. But just kind of what is the game plan for employing these two guys and getting the ball out to the playmaker? Are they running a 2 QB system here coming down the Jordan Hare?
Yeah, so the last few years, Cal's really struggled at employing the right starting quarterbacks, and last year's battle with Ben Finley and Sam Jackson V, now that you end up looking at it, ironically enough, ended up being a battle of futility. This year's battle between Fernando Mendoza and Chandler Rogers, at least at the surface level, does not look like a battle of futility. You got two guys who are decidedly levels above the competition last year that was in that quarterback room, and guys who can go out and just make plays. Fernando Mendoza, a 2-star quarterback recruit out of Miami, Florida, and he's just a gamer. Like you look at that 2-star rating, you're like, I mean, this guy's not going to do anything. He can't be expected to do anything. And he comes in, he drops 40 points. His first game against Oregon State, drops 49 against USC. Struggled in some respects, like at Oregon. That was a tough game for him. Went on the road at UCLA against a really elite defense and tore them to pieces after some somewhat inconsistent play. But those are the types of plays that you can see from Fernando Mendoza, someone who's just willing to put it out all on the line for this team, regardless of what his stature says and what anyone else says about him. On the other side is Chandler Rogers, a guy who has a little bit more athleticism compared to Fernando Mendoza, a guy who's got a lot more experience in the college football game compared to Fernando Mendoza, and someone who can attempt at times to go outside the pocket. And this past weekend against UC Davis was a little bit confusing at times because the coaches really want to try and get both quarterbacks in a rhythm, but you can't really get them in a rhythm when you're pulling them actively out of games, not for performance-related reasons. And Fernando took his time and did better than what Chandler did with his time. And then Justin Wilcox said after the game, well, ideally, we wish we could have gotten Chandler more in a rhythm. Well, how are you going to get him in a rhythm when the offensive line's collapsing, when guys are getting injured left and right? Yeah. And then on top of that, he was making too many quick reads and too much indecision out there that made me lean to believe it's Fernando Mendoza's job, and anything else other than design run packages for Rodgers would be malpractice this Saturday.
Well, Thomas, let's talk about the guys that are going to be blocking for those two. Is there returning starters on the Cal offensive line? Are there newcomers, transfer portal guys? What can we expect from that Cal O-line?
Yeah, we've got a mix of everything, really. We've got transfers, we've got returners, we got guys who we expected to play, we got guys who we didn't expect to play. And I go back to the theme of injuries. So I have a sticky note below that tells me all the injuries right now that we have in significant positions, and that includes the offensive line. So our offensive line this past week against UC Davis, no starting center, no starting right guard, backup center got injured during the game but came back. Starting left tackle got injured during the game and then came back. And that's where we stand at that. So a lot of guys already in the offensive line, and we're playing musical chairs and it's week one, and you're like, I need the best five somehow out there. And you don't know what it is because you haven't seen it enough to warrant, I guess I have these guys. I guess I have a group that can consistently get up and get into the right pad level that we need in order to win and move the ball. So I look at it and I think, well, do we have our starting center this week? I don't really know. Do we have our right guard starting this week? He's been injured since fall camp and has not played since. So it's just a lot of who, what, when, where, why, how. I don't know what we have right now, which is it's an alarm bell when you walk into Jordan Hare Stadium. You think, okay, we're going to establish the run. We're going to help go max protect when you don't really know what guys you're working with. So the guys I'm really looking at are right tackle TJ Session. He's a veteran. He's a guy who's been around in the program. This is now his third year. I look at the left guard, Rush Reimer. He's a guy who transferred in from Montana State. I look at the left tackle position. We got two of them. One of them who's taken the provisional starting spot, Nick Morrow, who played his first active game of college football this past weekend, a converted tight end out of high school. And then the backup, a swing tackle, a transfer from Temple, Victor Stoffel. So those are the guys I'm looking at because I know I can pencil them in and think, okay, you guys are healthy enough to play. Everyone else, good luck. We'll figure it out Saturday when I walk into the press box at Jordan Hare.
Yeah, that sounds rough, brother. Auburn's been there, though. Auburn, we've been there recently. We definitely know that 2 QB struggle in the middle of a game. When I look at this UC Davis situation, man, the game y'all played last week, only averaged 2.7 yards per carry, and a lot of that would make sense as you discuss a lot of the issues there on the offensive line. But I mean, what are some ways now that Cal could try to run the ball? You can't just come into the, on the road here to SEC Stadium and just air it out. So is it going to be some of that, maybe wildcat with Rodgers at quarterback? I mean, just what are some ways that maybe Cal can find some yards on the ground in this game?
Yeah, I think employing the zone read with Chandler Rogers would be great. Honestly, you get 3 yards a carry with someone like Chandler Rogers. But at the same time, he has to be able to make his reads in a timely manner. He can't get sped up just because I'm in for my special play and I can only do this or I can only do that. He's got to be able to maintain his poise because he's someone who has been in the college football game a long time. He knows better than just sit down, pull the ball, and run up into a pile of humanity. That's what I called it in my post-game column after UC Davis. The Cal running backs, the Cal quarterbacks, and even in some cases the Cal wide receivers, they were just running into a pile of humanity because it was like rush hour traffic in the A and B gaps. Because that's essentially what happened at times. So when I look at it, Chandler Rogers has to make sure to let things develop. Because even though it may not work out in the long term, you've got to sit there and work your process. You can't just mentally be like, oh, I don't trust my teammates to get the job done here. I have to make sure I can follow my lead, follow my teammates, and see what happens. Because you make a guy miss in the open field, or you get a guy who's got the bad leverage coming down into the box from like the safety position. It can make all the difference. So I would really like to see some zone reads from the Cal Cal team, especially with Chandler Rogers in, and try some little more outside runs, especially outside zone. We didn't really run a whole lot of that during UC Davis, and when you just run up the middle between the guards and run into the so-called pile of humanity that I just called it, you're going to get the law of diminishing returns, which is kind of what happened over the course of the game.
Yeah.
Is Jaden not healthy? Is he good to go?
Man, your guess is as good as mine on that one. Justin Wilcox is always very coy about injuries. He plays it like a poker hand. He's not going to tell you anything, no matter how directly you ask about it. And like, he's not going to offer up anything voluntarily unless pressed about it. So he had his press conference today. He did say probable. Now, when I look at it compared to when I was sitting there in the box against UC Davis and saw him limping around, I'm like, what Jaden wants versus what the medical staff says may be two different things. And when I look at that, Jaden's going to have the motivation to say, hey, I want to go up against Eugene Asante one more time because of the result that happened last year. I want to make sure I can go prove him wrong. And then you get the medical staff who may have to say, you know what, you're maybe only at 70%. This is only one game, regardless of how big that game may be in your head. We have a season to play. So that's one thing I look at. If I had to make a projection myself, I don't think he'll be anything more than 80% come Saturday. Maybe I end up being wrong. But when I look at it based on how I saw him moving, based on how the injury occurred, and based on just the general silence around the program, it's going to be on any side of the coin on that one. You just hope for the best, and if he's healthy, he's healthy. If he's not, don't be afraid to pull him, even though it's a big game.
There we go.
Yeah. So Thomas, I'm gonna bring up Michael's comment right here. He says, even though we won last year, this feels like a revenge game to me. So Auburn feels like they should have won the game, a lot more than 14-10. They felt like they left a lot of points out on the field. But I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, if I'm Cal, I'm feeling like we let a big opportunity. We had an SEC. We talked to you last year, and you talked about how excited just the Cal fan base was to have an SEC team coming into Cal Berkeley. And I think Auburn turned the ball over 4 times, and you still let that one slip away. We drove the ball down late, touchdown to Rivaldo Fairweather in the end zone there. So kind of, and then you mentioned Jay Knott one more shot. I mean, Eugene Asante in a lot of ways put Auburn on his back and won the game. And for a linebacker to win a football game for a team in this day and age, he just really put on the show. So I'm looking at it, man, and I'm like, Cal's got to be feeling we got a shot to come down here, and we want some get back too. We let this one slip through our hands. Do you get sense any of that around the building? Like, this is a revenge game for Cal?
Yeah. To start with Michael's comment, I agree with what he's just saying in that regard, because even though Auburn won the game, you can argue both fan bases left that game thinking nobody really won. We just sat there in 3 hours on the West Coast at night, and in some cases watching at Central Time and East Coast time later elsewhere. You're like, I just sat down and watched that. What just happened? Why did that happen? Why? I don't want to deal with Pac-12 After Dark ever again. And for Cal, it's the same song, different verse. Justin Wilcox teams in 1-score games. I was doing the math just before the show, and I came out with a rough count of 13-23, 13-24 in 1-score games under his tenure. And while that's all well and good in terms of setting the tone of, hey, we want revenge, we want to show these guys that we didn't put our best foot forth, especially on one side of the football, or even two sides of the football, arguably. You got to prove it to me. It's like we talked off air about just the despair of the Brian Harsin era and the despair of the Billy Napier era that's going on out in Florida. For Cal fans, you're not going to, unless you're saying, okay, we're going to irrationally go 12-0, we're going to make the ACC championship, make the playoff. Unless you're in that road where every fan base has a few of those people that think of the season like that, they're going to think, well, I have no reason to pick you guys in a 1-score game, especially against a team that has the stature of Auburn. It's just not going to happen. You have to prove it to me, because you haven't done it in the past. You've proven consistently that no matter when the fan base comes in and buys into you, you're just going to leave them with broken hearts as they leave the stadium. So in that case, the team internally, sure, they're going to have a tone of revenge, a tone of, hey, what happened last year cannot happen again. And if that happens, we might get run out of the stadium. But externally, the fans are like, you just got to prove it to us. You're going to have some, I want to say 7,000 to 9,000 Cal fans that probably will make the trip down to Auburn. And they'll say, sure, we're here for a fun time. We're here to experience not only a road game, but a destination, a college football cathedral, if you will. But Cal fans, the team has to prove it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You just have to win the game. If that's 10-7, if that's 48-44, if that's in 5 OTs, just find a way, because this is a team and a program and a coaching regime that has not done so going into year 8 now of the Justin Wilcox era.
Oh Man. Yeah, year 8 of the Justin Wilcox era. Like, and you talk about finding a way to win the game, Thomas. What are the expectations for this season, though? Moving from the Pac-12 to the ACC, you guys made a bowl game last year. Like, I know that was a huge step, because when we talked, uh, I remember the feeling being like, hey, if we could just somehow get to like 4 or 5 wins, like I think that would be pretty massive for Cal. And you guys ended up going 6 wins, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
so really what the spark of that was Fernando Mendoza coming in at quarterback, because
yeah.
it's one thing for the physical capabilities of a quarterback. It's another thing for that quarterback to lead the team. Ben Finley was not a leader last year. Sam Jackson V was not a leader last year. Fernando Mendoza was a leader last year. And that helped spark the Cal team on both sides of the ball. And that can only get you so far. Like, for example, they played Oregon, they got mollywopped 63-19. I was there. It was ugly, but expected. It just happens when you have the talent deficit. But we go into an even game like against UCLA and they slaughter them 33-7 to get bowl eligible. That just shows you how close the team got over the course of the season, beating Washington State, beating Stanford, beating UCLA, and basically arising a team from the dead and saying, hey, we're not done yet. Here's what we're about to do to you. So when I look at that, that's how Cal took the momentum and now is supposed to really execute in the ACC this year, because in all reality, as we've seen through these first few weeks, the ACC top teams that we were looking at may not be so strong. And I look at the Florida State Seminoles. I'm looking at you. Everyone's talking about you. There's a guy that's on the run that's got comeuppance coming to him in regards to eating some dog, what. So like we're all waiting to see that. Florida State's cratered, and I compare it to the Pac-12 in the sense of last year was a bloodbath, complete bloodbath of teams you had to face. Listen to all these quarterbacks you had to face last year, and Cal didn't face some of them, but just listen to this list: Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Shadur Sanders, Cam Ward, DJU was good at Oregon State.
It was.
And that's just that's half the conference right there. And Cal had to play Penix, Nix, Williams, Ward, and they only could do so much. Utah is one of the most physical teams in the nation, and they somehow, some way, came out of that other side 5-6 and trying to get a bowl game with UCLA. Now you don't have those like big bad wolves, if you will, in the ACC. It's a lot of middling teams that are packed together, but maybe only at this juncture you can say Miami's the one that's above them all. So Cal's expected, I would say, going into this year, 7 wins, 8 wins if you break it right. But with those injuries that I talked about earlier, maybe you have to scale it back a little bit, saying maybe 6 to 7 is where the window is.
Dustin, before I kick it to you real quick, I just gotta give Thomas a round of applause, man. That dagger to Florida State that you just threw out there, it feels good. It feels good, and I think you're a national treasure, man, at this podcast and stuff and what you do. Florida State, man, watching the struggle was fun. All right, and for old buddy to make that bet and then bounce back and say, hey, I'm just going to delete the socials. All right, I know Barstool was trying to track him. All right, Barstool was after him, but that's why I had to ask the question, because the ACC, without Miami, they look just, I mean, everybody wanted to throw shade on the Pac-12 and, oh, the Pac-12 is not that good. The Pac-12 is not that great. But the ACC looks like a conference where you could go in and win, man. So I had to ask that one. I think Cal is going to do just fine. But Dustin, I know you had a question about travel and things like that.
Yeah. Before I got 2 more. I do have that one. Real quick though, Thomas, I got to kind of ask you, man. I watched that first half of the UC Davis game. And it got kind of cleaned up in the second half, but there was a lot of guys wide open for UC Davis. And we know that the defense has kind of been one thing in these, in the Justin Wilcox era. You look at Cal and you're like, all right, I know y'all going to play pretty good D. And then Auburn, it was a bunch of freshmen, and it was Alabama A&M. But there was a passing display going on Saturday night that Auburn hasn't seen in a long time. What is your concern level as far as just that matchup right now, guarding those 4 and 5 star, those talented young freshmen for Auburn, and then Lambert Smith, obviously a big time transfer from Penn State, and kind of like, I guess just why were people that wide open? I'm not used to seeing that from a Cal defense.
Yeah, so this is gonna be a little bit of a two-parter. So going back to last year's game against Auburn, that was probably the second best game on defense Cal played that year. Now, when you look at outside of that bubble, let's see, they gave up 59 to Washington. They gave up 63 to Oregon. They gave up 52 to Oregon State. They gave up 50 to USC. You kind of see where the trend's going here. We didn't get a sack in conference play for a whole month to start the conference. So it started September 24th against UW. We didn't get a sack until October 28th against USC. Like defense was bad.
Goodness.
It was just awful, like completely. There was no pass rush, and because there's no pass rush, there was too much pressure on the linebackers to come fill that gaps, and there was too much pressure on the secondary to plaster for longer than can reasonably expected. So what you guys saw was actually one of the anomalies. Cal played well on defense against UCLA, against Auburn, arguably against Stanford, and in spurts against Washington State, and that's really it. Coming into this year, there was a bit more injection of talent. TJ Bowler's transferred in from Wisconsin on the D line. Aiden Kiana transferred in on the defensive line from Notre Dame. So a lot more big guys up front that can really, what I want to see is batting the balls at the line of scrimmage. Cal's had a big problem just not being active at the line of scrimmage in years past. And this past week against Davis, they had about 3 or 4 batted passes at the line, which is what I want to see. Going back to your question and concern about the tackling and the spacing, the part of it, and I'm going to refer to your guys' game against UMass last year when you guys were somewhat struggling with the zone read game. You play your offense so much during fall camp. You get used to that and seeing that and not necessarily live tackling all that often, that when you see someone else, you have to like recalibrate yourself for a little bit. And that's kind of what Cal did. The first half against UC Davis, it was ugly, all sides of the ball. Offense, defense, occasionally special teams. It wasn't that great. But then in the second half, they just settled down. That's what a Justin Wilcox team needed to do. And that's kind of what they do against FCS teams. It happened against Idaho last year, happened against Weber State in 2017, happens against North Texas, even though they're not an FCS team. It happened to them too when they came out to Berkeley in 2019. So there's just a lot of plotting that goes around sometimes with Justin Wilcox teams. But once they settled down and once they did, it helped because they did have an injection of talent that one helped the floor of the defense, but that's going to need to be even better because they're facing a much better wide receiver room this year in Auburn. I think last year I can only reasonably say Jay Fair and then the last drive of Rivaldo Fairweather were all the only guys who consistently could get open. This year you got guys like Cam Coleman, you got Perry Thompson, you got Keandre Lambert-Smith. Those guys can help wreck games for you. And even in the case of Cal having veteran corners like Marcus Harris and Noah Williams, they can hold Cam Coleman to 3 catches, but he could have 90 yards and a touchdown because that's just the boom mentality and the boom ability that Auburn receiving room has. So while I think they can hold the Auburn offense in check in spurts, all it takes is 1 or 2 game-breaking plays with the talent that has been injected compared to last year.
Yeah. All right, I hear you, buddy. Now, I want to talk about the schedule real quick. Like we mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, you guys are over there in the ACC now, and so I'm just going to read this off, man. And first off, shout out to Cal because we actually had a home-and-home with UCLA, and then UCLA, after joining the Big Ten, said, you know what, we're already making enough trips over there. We're going to have to cancel that thing. Cal said, no, we owe you. You came over here, so we'll go over there. So you had UC Davis at home last week. Now you're coming to Auburn obviously this week. Then it's back at home to take on San Diego State, and then you go into Florida State. Then you come back to California to play Miami at home, and then it's to Pitt, and then back home versus North Carolina State, and then you have another home game versus Oregon State, and then out to Wake Forest, Winston-Salem on a Friday, then back home for Syracuse. And then you got Stanford again at home, and then you end the season out in Dallas. Thomas, this is ridiculous. Like this is just ridiculous, man. So I don't even know what's that, like 3,000 miles total or something. I'm sure somebody over there on the Cal side has added that up. Man, just how was the football team? How was the coaching staff, the nutrition staff, the training staff, everybody involved in that? How are they planning for that? I'm sure there's got to be some kind of plan for it. And then the administration, like not just this year, but moving forward. How do you deal with the cost of that? Just the wellness and the health of the athletes. That's just a big undertaking, man, for a college program to do. And then I look at it in the future and I'm like, is Cal really going to do this for the next decade? It just seems nuts to me, dude.
Yeah, you look at it, it's nuts. And you mentioned the football level, and we've talked also about the Olympic sports level. Like, it's a toll. There's no sugarcoating that. You can only get excited about going to places like Winston-Salem so many times. So you look at it like year 1, year 2, even year 3. You're like, okay, I'm going to new places. I'm not going to, say, Pullman, Washington to play Wazoo anymore. I'm not going to Tempe to play Arizona State anymore. You're going to, okay, I can think of it like a work vacation, if you will. I'm going to a new spot, experience a new place, maybe experience a new culture. And then you get to a certain point where it's like, maybe it's midterms for whatever reason, and you're going to play Wake Forest, and you're like, I just don't want to do this. Like, as simple as it sounds. Like, I know I'm scholarshiped up, and that's what I have to do. That's what I'm being, paid to do at this point. But it's inconceivable as to how all the logistics come together. And yet Cal, Stanford, and even SMU to agree, UCLA, USC, Oregon, Washington, they've all agreed to this. They're like, Okay, let's go. Wheels up, because we want to make sure that college football, which pays the bills in the athletic department, can keep going. It needs to be a train that leaves every single station that it arrives at, or else the whole thing's going to come to a crashing halt. And when I look at it, I think the student athletes, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to like it for the first few years. They're going to be like, this is so sick. I get to go to I get to go experience Florida State Stadium. I get to go experience what it's like playing at North Carolina for basketball or Duke for basketball. I get to go see what it's like along the Carolinas, even for baseball in some cases. And then you pull it back and you're like, well, you still got to make sure teachers are involved because they know where they're at, where their students are going to be. You got to make sure that operations is getting the equipment truck all the way across the country at certain points. And I look at the nutrition. It's just like, they're going to have jet lag. It's going to happen. I look at it from the NFL perspective. I'm a Raiders fan. I've been a Raiders fan since they were based in Oakland. You can pretty much pencil in one East Coast disaster per year. And that's not to say like just because they were a bad team or anything. It just happens. Like they just walk up, they show up, and it's like they're not even there for whatever reason or another. And I feel like I have to carry that same mentality with Cal in the coming years of like, they could be a good team. They could recently be a 7 to 8 win team. And then they go play at Boston College one random Friday night, and they get wiped, like completely wiped, like 35-10 or something. I'm like, well, that's not supposed to happen. But it's just kind of like the variance game that you play now because you're in the ACC, because you're playing all these schools across the country, and now you have to deal with the heavy load of undertaking physically, mentally, spiritually, however you want to dice it. It's just a big load overall, and that's one I really want to see how it turns out a few years down the line, because the way I look at it, it's going to end up being the law of diminishing returns. Like I'm sure, for example, in a world where Auburn transfers to the Big 12, playing Oklahoma, like you get excited to go to Stillwater, Oklahoma for the first few times, and you're like, I don't want to go Stillwater, Oklahoma anymore. So that's just kind of the vibe I put out there, and the vibe I kind of foresee happening. And then those challenges, once they reach them, I'm intrigued to see how they handle it, because truthfully, I don't know. We haven't done this before, and I don't know how long we're going to do it for. So that we'll just have to wait and see.
Man, that's that's brutal on your fan base too. I can just only imagine, like, you guys having to travel to Miami. I mean, how many fans are going to be able to just go from Cali to Miami? And I mean, that's just super tough. And with right now, with everything, like a flight is so expensive, man. And you're just asking all these to just go each week, all across the United States. Is crazy to me. But Dustin, I see we got a super chat, man, and it's talking about the defensive side of the football. Yeah. Thomas, we got a couple more before we let you get out of here, man. Real quick, what is that defense going to look like? Dustin, hit that super chat question, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Our boy Thomas asked, can Cal's D-line hang with Auburn's O-line? Thomas, how you see this matchup?
I think they can hang with them in spurts. I did notice that Auburn is trying to rotate their left tackles around. I do notice that around the interior to the right side looks pretty penciled in. It looks pretty experienced all around. It doesn't look to be that there's any like red flags or alarm bells being raised by Hugh Freeze. I look at the left side of the ball. I would try and line up David Reese there. That's the premier pass rusher that Cal's had, and he single-handedly won some games last year. Like UCLA has nightmares about David Reese. He pretty much ended Dante Moore's UCLA tenure and had him like seeing stars. Now, am I going to say that? Am I saying all that to say David Reese is going to have 5 sacks Saturday? No. But I am saying that in terms of if I wanted to pinpoint a matchup or pinpoint an area of, hey, maybe we can get a win here, maybe get a strip sack and get Cal the ball maybe at the Auburn 30, that's where I would pinpoint it. Now, can they expose that consistently? I'm not so sure, because as I mentioned earlier, the Cal pass rush last year was not good. It took a whole month to get a sack in conference play. And some Cal writers are like, oh, it's all beefed up. We got transfers. We got all that. But it's still largely the same nucleus. So when I look at that and I see Auburn being pieced together fairly well and it's got most of the offensive line together, I'm thinking, well, you better come prove it, or else Peyton Thorne can have a 5-course meal back there. And who knows what's going to happen when you have those receivers running around and you're asking our corners to plaster for 7+ seconds. So that's how I kind of look at it. I think Cal's going to have to be opportunistic and try and make the left side of the Auburn line kind of confused. I've run some twists, run some stunts. Those are the types of things that can make sure to force the Auburn left side of the offensive line to communicate consistently and make sure that, hey, they're looking over their shoulders saying, if I miscommunicate here, my backup's going to come in and I'm going to get yanked. And that maybe getting their mental game that way. That's how I kind of foresee it happening. Cal's going to have to be opportunistic on that front, because I'm less high on the defensive line than others. That's not to say they haven't gotten better, but overall, they, like I mentioned earlier, they got to prove it to me. Cal, I can't just say, oh, hey, we got all this. Look at all these shiny new stars. We're going to be better. That's not how that works. You have to have a proof of concept. I have a bigger proof of concept than most Cal fans have. So that's that's something I want to look for. Can Cal be opportunistic with the left side of the Auburn offensive line?
What do you think it ends up Saturday, Thomas? Give us a score prediction.
Yeah, so I had to recalibrate my expectations of this game from 2 weeks ago to now. So just to go back to the sticky note of injuries, I've got Jade Knott, starting running back, injured. Backup running back got injured on a fumble on his first carry ever last week. The starting left tackle who I mentioned, the starting center who I mentioned, the starting right guard who I mentioned. Wide receiver 1 is out. Wide receiver 2 is out. Wide receiver 5 is probably going to be out. That's a lot of guys. It's a lot of firepower that's being lost by the wayside right now. And that's not to say other guys who may have been nicked up. And some of the guys might play. Like, it's one thing if they play, it's another thing if they play well and can play as healthy as they can. But because of that, I don't think Cal has enough of juice that they once did. And I thought that the boom guys that they brought in, like Tobias Merriweather from Notre Dame or Keon Grays from Ohio State, those guys are questionable, but they don't look like they're going to play based on what I saw on the sideline. That's not to say maybe they make a miracle recovery and they suit up and whatever. But when I look at it and based on what I saw, it's like, it's not looking so hot. And that really lowers the ceiling significantly for the Cal Bears. And when I look at Fernando Mendoza, he's got guts. He really does. He's a gamer. You guys are really going to see it on display. He's going to put his body on the line. He's not going to see the idea of, oh my God, I'm going to SEC territory without my guys. It's over. He's going to give Cal fans the inspiration to show them that I'm going to give you everything. Regardless of what happens, I'm going to give you everything, and you will not be able to question that regardless of what the score is on the scoreboard. But because of everything, all surrounding factors, all things considered, I have a score prediction of Auburn 28, Cal 17. I think if Cal had those offensive weapons around them, I think it would be for sure a one-score game. And then even with that, it's a further conversation of, can Cal actually win a one-score game, like I mentioned earlier. So that's where I kind of have it. I think Cal can reasonably assume to stop the Auburn offense at times. But like I mentioned earlier, Cam Coleman can just break one, and that's all it takes for one touchdown right there and a game to be put out of reach. I think it'll be close into the fourth quarter, and then Auburn maybe kicks a late field goal or Cal kicks a late field goal to get it within one possession. But that's kind of how I see it playing out. If they had their full complement of guys, I'd reconsider, but that's just kind of where we stand.
Yeah, that's a tough injury list, man. Before you get out of here, Thomas, just our fans over here in the comments are really showing you some love, man. Brett says, I'm kind of sad we're done playing Cal. I like Thomas. He knows his stuff. And yeah, man, we talked about this last year, Brett. We got done recording with Thomas, and we were like, man, that just felt good. We got to find a way to do some more content. So maybe sometime in the future, we'll link up and do just some broader college football type discussion. Because y'all love Thomas. We love Thomas. And Thomas, I know that you had a question that you wanted to ask from the Cal fans' perspective coming down to Auburn this weekend to me and Blake.
Yeah. So one thing to just show the Auburn fans real quick. I hope you guys like the shirt. I hope you recognize what logo this is. I hope you love it. It's a pretty nice shirt, and on the back it just says it just means more. So
let's go.
We like it. One of the Cal fans started designing this shirt, and it's really, really fire. But the question I wanted to pose to Dustin, Blake, and the rest of the chat and community for you guys is, what makes the game day experience tick for you guys? What makes it uniquely Auburn? What should we Cal fans who have not been there before be looking out for, whether it's something that's really obvious, something that's underrated, or something that may be underappreciated? What makes the game day experience work for you guys?
Man, I'll tell you this. When you get to Auburn and you go check out Toomer's Corner, and you sit there in front of Sanford Hall and you take all of that in, and you just visualize that scene that is in front of you, and those trees, those oaks, man, and that lemonade, and you're walking through the campus, and it's just a fall afternoon, and it's the passion of SEC football, and it's the loveliest village on the plains, man. And it's breathtaking, the views that you can get at Auburn University. And when you get to Jordan Hare Stadium and you see the Tiger Walk and all of your closest friends on that Saturday, and they're lining up and they're ready to just burst out for this team and have that passion to go in there and compete on Pat Dye Field, and it's all of the history coming back to you, man. It's like me, I was 19, 20 years old, Cam Newton, and that national championship, and you look up and you see it right there. all of that good stuff, man. I wasn't around during the Bo Jackson days, but my dad always, fills me in of he's the greatest athlete to ever walk, and it's those types of things. It's the history and it's the fan base that just pours the emotion out for me, and it. Anytime I go to Auburn, it just it's pure electricity. And no matter if we're good, if we're bad, or we're ugly, we show up because not only do we love Auburn football, but we love Auburn.
Yeah.
And Thomas, that's what it is Auburn baseball. We were supposed to have a great year last year. We were down. We still supported Auburn baseball. We didn't have the year that we thought. We had been going to Omaha and we failed miserably. But guess what? We still showed up. Our fans still packed Plainsman Park. Our basketball team, we won the SEC tournament and got a championship out of that. We lost to Yale in the first round, but our fans still showed up when those boys come back home. Our fans were still there to greet them, even though it was a devastating end to a season that had so much promise in that tournament. And it's things like that, man. And one place that I'll tell you to check out that I absolutely love on game day, it's one of my favorites. It's Mama G's. Go in there and get you some nachos. All right, get that cheese steamed on there now. Get it right. You can add chicken and stuff like that if you want. But man, Mama G's is a treasure. And, you got the bar outside with the TVs and all that good stuff. It's a really cool scene. And you got Jordan Hare Stadium right there in the background. It's really a fun time, and it's a fun atmosphere, man. You're going to have an absolute blast. And any Cal fan making that trip, tell them that not only are you coming to Auburn, Alabama, but you're coming to meet some of the friendliest people that you will ever come across. Like, Auburn fans are not going to be rude to you. They're going to give you just straight up Southern hospitality, and they're going to show you the best time, man. And it's just nothing but love, Thomas.
Yeah, just to kind of add to what Blake said, Thomas. I think we kind of take pride in the fact that, like, we want people to, like, in this situation, we want y'all to go back to Cal and say, hey, man, they treated us right. Like, we had a good time. We ate great food. Didn't win a football game, but we had a good time. They were real nice to us. Like, we take that personal, man. We want people to come into Auburn and leave having a good time. Like Blake said, we take that being friendly serious. There's another team on the side of the state. You won't get that same experience if you go visit their stadium. So we really do take that to heart, and we consider that. And for me, man, I think family is the biggest thing when it comes to Auburn. It's I've been in that stadium a million times, and every time you still think back to being there with, the first time with your dad when you were a kid and all that. And it's just the generations of that. The tomb, Blake talked about tumors and the eagle flying and all the traditions. It's just, we've been doing it for 100 years. So we're going to keep doing it kind of thing. It feels right. You only get 12 football games a year. You only get 7 or 8 at home. So you only get so many times to kind of meet back up with all your friends and all your family that you haven't seen since last fall, that you've been talking to on Twitter all year. Well, you meet up at the game and you sit by each other and you're high five and just that whole camaraderie, that whole family feel. And then one thing that I would definitely go check out Mama G's. But if you're coming down from Cal and you're probably going to be there you're going to be there all weekend. Listen, if this rain holds off, Thomas, y'all get over to Auburn High. Okay. If you want to see what football in the South is all about, Auburn High is taking on Opelika Friday night. It's 7A football in the state of Alabama. It don't get no bigger in high school. They're big rivals, one town over type deal. You're going to have multiple 4 and 5 stars on the field out there. And I think you'll be amazed at the way Auburn High does it. It's literally like being at a college game, just the production and just the way they do it. And then the talent on the field, you'll stop and say, oh, this is why everybody, see, like USC is just camping out in Alabama and Georgia right now trying to get recruits because it's just everywhere. But I think, like, if you kind of just want to see, like, why football is what it is in the South, why it's so serious in Alabama, get over there Friday night. Auburn High is a couple miles from the stadium. Get over there and check that out. For one, you're going to see some good football, but it'll kind of just give you this, like, you'll kind of get an indication of the culture of what it is. Like, man, they do this down here, and they pump money even into the high school, the middle schools. They're about it, man. So I just think that would be a good thing for Cal fans to kind of come out and experience, just get the whole Alabama football experience, man, because that's going to be a good game out there. It's going to be a lot of blue chips out there, and yeah, man, I'm really excited for Cal to come out here and experience this, and I think it's going to be a good time for y'all, man.
Yeah, I'm excited. I know lots of people are excited to come out here. In my case, I'm doing a double duty. So Saturday, Cal Auburn football. The next day, NASCAR in Atlanta. So I'm excited.
Love that.
All things considered, if anybody sees me around, flag me down. I'm happy to talk shop and happy to just immerse myself in what I consider not only just a road game, but a destination. So I'm ready to see how it plays out, and we'll see what happens on the gridiron. Knowing Cal, anything I say right now can get disproven easily, or I'll be 100% right on the money. So we'll see.
Well, Thomas, real quick, man, when you go in and get that lemonade, there's tons of flavors and all of that stuff. Keep it to the original, brother. Get you that original. And you can branch out, maybe get you another one and try it, or a different flavor or whatever, but make sure you get that original lemonade. It's the best. I'm thinking about it right now. Early Saturday morning, I'll have my cup filled up, brother. So, yeah, man, it's been a fun one. Good luck to your Cal Bears. Dustin, you can get us out of here, man.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Y'all go follow Thomas. You see his Twitter right there. Thomas, where can people find your work, buddy?
People can find the work for me and the rest of the California Golden Bears at Right for California, WRITEFOR, California.com. War Report, built for fans, by fans. We say what we have to say. We're not afraid to say it, and we only do it in the name of wanting our team to be great.
Let's go. All right, Thomas. Well, hey, man, shoot me a DM this weekend. Let's get up. I'll show you around campus, brother. Let's have a good time. I'd love to meet up with you in person, brother. Real quick, for our members, Blake, I recorded the little recruiting update podcast yesterday. Little update on Dante Core Friday night. I'm telling y'all, the man is balling. And I'm going to go out there this Friday night. Rain be damned, baby. I'll sit through the thunderstorm for y'all. I'm getting this Malik Autry tape. I'm getting these clips for him. Blake, real quick, brother, you got the Betting with Blake coming up this weekend. Tell everybody how and what they will get if they sign up for these memberships, man.
If you sign up for these memberships, the $3.99 a month JV squad, you see right there, early access to videos, member shout outs, all that good stuff. If you want to take it a step further, go to the varsity squad, $5.99 a month, recruiting update videos, like Dustin just said. Malik Autry this Friday night. We're in town. We are in town for the Auburn and Cal game, so it's going to be a fun one. Game day group chat, it's popping every day. A lot of big nuggets coming up about Auburn recruiting. Things seem to be getting thick again, so get ready for that. Gameplay with you. You see me and Dustin, we're just constantly on that College Football 25 posting clips, and then watch the film. It's continuous for Dustin posting his highlights that he gets on Friday nights. Me, I'm on there, and then you're going to get betting with Blake this week before Saturday, my best betting lines. We had a little fun with it last Saturday. Let's roll it over and have another great week. So become a member, and I think you will certainly enjoy it, and we're hard at it.
Yes, sir. All right, guys, we will be back Thursday night with our official preview of Saturday's matchup versus Cal. Again, big thank you to Thomas Dunn for joining us, giving us a nice little look at the opponent. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. Smash that thumbs up button. Knocking on the door of 2,000, baby. We're like 100 away or something like that. So please subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and we will see you guys Thursday night. It's War Damn Eagle till they put me in the dirt, baby. We're out of here.
War Damn.